We have two fairly large academic competitions coming up here. We got Science Olympiad and then Science Fair. Now, Science Fair is going to come in first, March the 3rd. So, many students will do very well in this. I've already looked at several of the projects. So today I'm going to kind of go over what's on the website with you. So if you're planning on doing that, kind of give you a step forward in the right direction. And then we'll spend, 5 or 6 minutes every other day just trying to get you ready for Science Fair, what to expect. Now, in life, what does it generally take to be successful? Well, let's first look at people who have been successful. And we got the Olympics coming up, so I thought I'd look at Michael Phelps. What do you think he said it takes to be successful?
Hard work.
Okay, what else? Raise your hand.
Dedication.
Raise your hand. Jake? Determination. What else?
Dedication.
Dedication. Anything else?
Faith.
All right, well, he says up here, I think you got that. He said, that's the easy part. Ask what it takes to become a champion. And Phelps immediately replied, I think that part is pretty easy. It takes hard work, dedication, not giving up. So you have to keep that in mind when you are, striving to be,
I don't like him. Sorry.
competitive.
You should have kind of
Did you know a neighborhood where she's like him?
Okay. Now, did Michael Phelps ever have any struggles?
yeah, he did some bad things when he was at the Olympics, and the people that were supporting him were like, eh.
What did he do?
Didn't he get beat up a guy?
No.
No.
That was a different set of people.
Yeah, that was different. Huh?
No, he did get caught using some, I think, marijuana.
Oh yeah.
But if you look at this article, it came out last week. I thought it was fairly interesting.
Keep him calm when guys.
He almost committed suicide.
Oh.
Right. So the article basically talks about his struggles with success. Oftentimes people think, once they're successful, everybody's going to respect them. And some of you all will be very successful in the Science Fair and in your life as well. And we kind of just want to help, you understand that once you are successful, you will probably have a couple burdens. Now, the biggest burden that Michael Phelps was struggling with had to do with being a little bit conceited. What does conceited mean?
Some big word.
Hold back. No.
Isn't it when you kind of think of yourself as higher as other people?
Yeah, you get a little bit self-centered. So that's what sports tends to do to you, or academics as well. When you get really, really successful, you think, I'm really, really great. And then when that success subsides a little bit, you have a little bit of trouble dealing with that. And that's what happened to Michael Phelps. He didn't win just one set of gold medals in one Olympics. He won them over and over again. And after, I think, the second Olympics that he won some gold medals, he came back and he was struggling with, that. He was struggling with dealing with people not respecting him like they were when he was winning those gold medals. So keep that in mind, that when you are successful, just because you are successful, life is not going to become easy for you. You're still going to have struggles. Tell me. There he goes. Raise your hand if you know who Dan Johnson is. Dan Johnson. Now, there are basically two Dan Johnsons that are associated with Kentucky. The first one, he supposedly was accused of doing something inappropriate, and he shot himself at a bridge just recently. Did you hear about that, Dan Johnson?
Yeah.
And his wife, I think, wants to take his Senate seat, the Kentucky Senate. And then there's the other Metro Council, Dan Johnson. Right, you heard about him?
Yeah.
Right, he was charged with inappropriately touching another council member's behind, and he just couldn't keep himself under control, and they ended up eventually firing him. Well, this gentleman right here was appointed to his seat. His name is Vitalis, and his last name is Vitalis. He's from Kenya, so I'm sorry I don't have it memorized. Vitalis Chima. Vitalis Chima? Is that right? Vitalis Chima. Now, he came to the United States from Kenya. Now, when he was younger, a situation occurred in which he lost his arms. A picture of Vitalis. He has lost his arms. So the question is, how did he lose his arms? Anybody know? I mean, he's on our Metro Council.
Was he
like a car accident?
Car accident. Okay, one we got car accident. Anybody else want to?
Well, if he was born in
Claire, we're talking about success. We're getting ready for the science fair. We're trying to get you success-minded. These people have had some success and they've had some struggles. So just because you have success doesn't mean you're not going to have any struggles, which is what we're trying to prepare you for.
Have struggles, no success.
So, a car accident, lost his arms. Now in Kenya, in some third world countries, like if you steal something, they'll cut your hands off because they don't have as many prisons then. So we have 1, he was in a car accident. 2, he got his hands cut off for stealing. 3, what else do you think could have happened? Anybody?
Disease or infection.
Disease or infection? How about Heather? What do you think could have happened to him?
Rain down the street, 2 minutes.
He lost his hands. What else do you think could have happened to him?
Got ran over.
Got ran over? All right. Well, if you read the article, he actually touched a high voltage wire when he was younger. And basically, high voltage will blow your hand off. Like if you take a
touch those electric fences with.
if you take a knife and you stick it into an outlet, it will shock you, could kill you, but
There's some special.
it won't blow your hand off. When you touch high voltage wires, they can and will blow your hand off. That's basically what happened. He touched it and it blew his hands off. You can read the article. This is what it says. Now, not having, Heather, please raise your hand while we're talking about this gentleman up here who got his hand blown off. Okay, well, just give me a minute so we can talk about our Metro Council member. He got his hands blown off because he touched a high wire. Now he went on high-powered wire. He went on to be a Olympic athlete. Now he was obviously not in the regular Olympics. He was in the Paralympics. Special, not special. Special means you like are mental struggles, but para means you have like a physical handicap. So he went on in the Paralympics to set some records. He set a record in the 400 at 52 seconds, and I think in the 200 around 22 seconds. Now that is not easy to do. You're talking about a less than 4 minute mile pace. You're under a 4 minute mile pace at that distance. All right, now, so he has.
Why are we so?
He has demonstrated to society success, both mentally and physically. It takes a lot of mental. I mean, Phelps just said up there. That's mental. Stress trying to prepare yourself for an event. You have to be mentally tough to do sports. That's why colleges love athletes, because they understand the discipline it takes to study over and over again. A lot of repetition there with that, a lot of practice associated with that. So he goes on and he gets a job at JCPS, right? And there he finds some struggles. There's some kids, that just don't, respect him a little bit. So he ends up doing a few things that get him in a little bit of trouble. He flips over a desk, and they end up suspending him. But my point to you on this situation is, oftentimes kids, they don't really see the struggles that you might have if you don't have any arms. It would be very difficult to do some, things that we might take advantage of, like, I don't know, using the restroom. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to use the restroom without hands. I don't even know how he does it. I don't really want to ask him, but yeah, but you still have to. How are you going to wipe yourself? There's some, some technical situations there.
I seen him open the door with a key. Like use that in my elementary school.
Okay.
Where does he use to open the door with a key?
Yeah, you can open the door, without hands.
Yeah, but you said he opened the door with a key.
Yeah, I mean, if you have handles, I don't know. It's going to be more difficult. That's my whole point to you. It's going to be more of a struggle. You are going to, I guess, be a little bit handicapped. Obviously, he is. I mean, he's a Paralympic. He has some handicap there associated with that. Oftentimes, people will say that, he didn't do something right, and that's why it happened to him. He was a kid when this happened. right? So throughout life, you know, even when you're successful, he has demonstrated success, you're still going to find yourself, you know, with struggles. Michael Phelps is another perfect example of that. I mean, he felt, you know, such great struggles, he almost thought about killing himself. Now, Vitalis never thought about doing that. He never came out publicly saying that. I'm just telling you that we're looking at two different people that have had some struggles in life. So once, you know, you become successful, you're at a very successful school, you have to remember that just because you are successful does not mean you're not going to have any burdens. It does not mean everybody is all of a sudden just going to be like, oh, you're great, and we're going to make life easy for you. They did not do that for Phelps. It wasn't just all of a sudden easy for him. And he mentions that in his article there. I encourage you to read it. The Louisville Science Fair STEM Wizard. Now, this program was set up for the Science Fair and was basically developed out of Louisville. A group of people out of Manual came up with this program. I'm not sure if other science fairs throughout the country are using it, but you know that it was developed locally here in Louisville. So what you're going to do if you're going to do the science fair, you're going to go up to where it says registration. You're going to click on registration. You're going to follow the directions. Registration, you fill out the details. My point with this process is I don't want you to think that, you know, once you're successful, you're not going to have any burdens. If you're better prepared for that to occur, then, you know,
Therapist on standby.
you will be, you know, ready for to go to get help if you need it. That's kind of what Michael Phelps was talking about. If you watch his article, he says, you know, I want to go out and help other people that might be struggling with this as well. He says that's really more important than the gold medals that he won. That's Michaela. She's registered for this. She selected my name as the teacher. We have the information, all of these exclamation points. We need to fill those out. Where it says registration fee, you're just going to say bill Eastern, and Eastern will get a bill and we'll pay for that. But everything else, it kind of guides you in the process of getting ready to present your project. Now, I would encourage you to ionic bonds and ionic compounds. It's a little bit of a review. So who wants to read? Page 210.
Sodium and chlorine. During this reaction, the sodium atom transfers its valence electron to a chlorine atom and becomes a positive ion. The chlorine atom accepts the electron.
Sodium chloride is a barium compound because it contains two different atoms.
On page 211, we just want to review that with ionic compounds, what happens to the electrons? Raise your hand. Points. Starts with a T. Electrons are transferred. Yes, electrons are transferred, right? And we discussed that metals before. Metals are kind of like men in that they seek to donate electrons, and non-metals are kind of like women, and that they seek to accept them. We are made of these, if you remember CHNOPS, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur. We're made of the atoms. So we're going to mimic some of their behaviors. Now, obviously, you have more non-metals than metals. However, if you use some analogies, they can help you remember how these atoms are moving around in you and how they're working. So, electron is transferred from the metal to the non-metal. That's how it works. That's the bond that's happening there. Similar to like what you would see in reproduction. Now, if you don't remember that, go back and study health. I'm not going to go over that again. So, who wants to read?
I took all my requirements.
The universal solvent, that's the thing that is typically separating the crystal or the salt and allowing it then to maybe react with something else. Now, lattice energy, we just talked about. Michaela, you said that it is what?
The amount of energy required to separate when all of the ions are in an ionic compound.
And on page 217, they give us some of the lattice energies. Like for sodium chloride, it's 769 kilojoules per mole. Now, what that means is that table salt will not separate on its own. It takes a bit of energy. Now, to make this clearer to you, you can take hot water. Will salt dissolve easier in hot water or cold water? Hot water. So, very good. So, water has energy in it above the freezing point is basically what we're talking about here. So the closer you get to the freezing point of water, the more difficult it is going to be to dissolve the salt in it. What's interesting about that, though, is that salt water is most dense at its freezing point. So the freezing point of ocean salt water is around 28.8 degrees Fahrenheit.
You think it's dumb that we use the imperial system?
Yeah.
It's like 32 Fahrenheit for 0 and
Right.
just 0.
It makes no sense.
I agree.
Exact numbers like Celsius.
That's part of the reason why I said 28.8, so you could recognize it a little easier than -1, because you would like. Now I was reading a little bit over the weekend. They were talking about water. I thought that you could freeze ocean water, make sea ice, and it would be like fresh water, but actually it's not. Ocean water or sea salt has a lot of salt still in it, and if you melted it, it would be too salty for human consumption. So even though the structures are a little bit different, like water up there is hexagonal, you can see how it's slightly at an angle there in its cubic nature, and then table salt over there is pure cubic. Even though they are different, the structural formation when ice forms is not great enough to push all the salt out. I thought that it was. If you'd asked me about, a year ago, or a couple days ago, really, I would have said that it was capable of pushing all the salt out. But I don't do a lot of experiments with salt water, so I just don't go home and take salt water and freeze it. And, it's just not a hobby of mine. But when I read about that, I find that interesting. I did not know that. So be aware that lattice energy, right here, there's energy in the water and it's moving, and that's the energy necessary to break the crystals down and get them to form ions. So we're trying to do is form ions to make new substances. Most chemistry in the lab is done in water. Because water is this universal solvent, you can make ions and you can make new things. And we want to draw your attention to where it says the second group. See second group and then you see first group. So what's the difference between the first group and the second group?
2 positive and 1 positive.
Right, so if we look over on the periodic table, we're talking about the first group like lithium, sodium, potassium, right? That's going to be pictured on the paper right here. Right here, the picture. So this is your first group. And then your second group has magnesium and calcium and so forth. Now the point here in this diagram is to show you that metals look like this. This is how they bond. It's called metallic bonding. And what they're doing there, they are trading electrons. So they trade. I give you an electron, you give me an electron. It's a very fast trade. The first group, how many are they trading?
Which one?
The first group.
12.
How many electrons are being traded in the first group for each atom?
Oh, for each atom is 1.
Yeah, 1. If you're in group 1, you're only going to trade 1 electron. How many electrons do you think you're going to trade if you're in group 2?
2.
Yeah, you're going to trade 2 electrons. Now, this is part of the reason that sodium and potassium don't really like to be in metals, because they're trading 1 electron, not a lot of bond strength happening with that. You drop it in water, it explodes. You drop potassium in water, explosion. Sodium, explosion. A lot less reactive than calcium. If you look at the third group over there, aluminum, how many electrons do you think are being traded there? In the third group, see boron, aluminum. It's in the third group.
3.
Yeah, 3. So aluminum is a fairly strong metal. as far as being bendable, ductile, resist corrosion. Those 3 electrons being traded, and they're doing it pretty much instantaneously. I trade you 3, you give me 3. And that's the reason why aluminum is not magnetic. If they didn't trade at equal rates, then there would be a positive and a negative somewhere along the aluminum metal. Does that make sense? I mean, this is like an instantaneous trade that's happening faster than you can think. I know it's fast. It's pretty amazing. It's faster than you can think. Yeah, it's fast. Because your thinking is what?
Light speed.
No, your thinking is electrical. So there are things that can go faster than electrons. Trust me. Like photons, particles of light. Environment. I know. Let's say you immigrated to this country and you came to this country with like no money. Obviously, you left a situation where you didn't have any money because you came to the country with no money. Shh, Nate. So you're trying to become successful, that is, to make money and be independent. Like you're seeing up here with Michael Phelps. Now, one of the illusions or false, I guess you would say, ideas would be that once you're successful, you're not going to have any new burdens. What's the biggest burden people tend to have when they are successful? You might know? Raise your hand. Hello? What's the biggest burden you might have once you become successful? Because you seem like, you're success driven. No, not really. Just because other people want your money, that's not really going to be a burden to you. Because you're probably going to say no anyway. Yeah. All right, so when Jamal says no, right, everybody else is going to think he's conceited. What does that mean? Yeah, self-centered and selfish. Very good, Jamal. And that can cause a lot of, let's say, mental problems for you. When you're very extremely self-centered, you can, struggle with life a little bit. Michael Phelps, he did. After he won his one of his first gold medals, he came back from all the glory, and then he was kind of like struggling with. He's like most in history. He was struggling with like what to do next. He was struggling with like life in general because he thought, he thought once he became successful, he would no longer have any burdens. And that's not typically what happens. You can see this with a lot of people, like just people that have been in the news a lot, like say like Tiger Woods. He had a couple DUIs because he got, he thought that once he was successful, all the burdens in life would go away, and that tends not to be the case. You tend to have more burdens that will come your way because people have this kind of expectation for you, and then you have this expectation for people. The biggest, I guess, expectation that you have for people is that people are gonna, respect you. That's the biggest, I guess, illusion or false view or false thinking that a lot of people have. People think that once you are successful, people will respect you, and that is not true. I'm gonna give you an example of that here in a minute. Lattice Chima, hope I said that right, he's from Kenya. This is another Olympian. So we're looking at 2 Olympians, obviously, because the Olympics are coming up. Unfortunately, these guys are Summer Olympics. Sorry, I'm just not a super Winter Olympics type person, but maybe I will be in the future as I get more engaged in the Olympics coming up, because North Korea and South Korea are going to be unified together. There's hope in the world. Now this guy up here is also an Olympian. He's a para-Olympian. What does that mean? Yeah, it means he has a physical disability. Now there's Special Olympics where you have a mental disability, and there's Paralympics when you have like a physical disability. So Vitalis has a physical disability. And raise your hand if you've heard of Dan Johnson. Dan Johnson? There are actually two Dan Johnsons. The Republican senator that took his life over a scandal, and then there's the other Dan Johnson who was Metro Council who like touched somebody's some female inappropriately, and then he kind of lost his job over it. Remember Dan Johnson? Y'all familiar with that? Y'all been following the news? Dan Johnson, Metro Council guy. Well, this gentleman here, Vitalis, is filling in for Dan Johnson. He's on the Metro Council, which is the only reason I'm kind of talking about it a little bit, because this is your government that he's representing. You should know a little bit about it. Now, he is a paraplegic. That means he doesn't have hands. He lost his hands in an accident. Now the question is, how do you think he lost his hands? Do you think they were cut off because he was stealing something? Raise your hand. Because I mean, in some third world countries, they don't have a lot of jails, so they punish people a little differently. Yeah, if you go back, like historically, there's evidence of people cutting your hands off for stealing. What else do you think could have happened? Amputated? How do you think he might have got him amputated? Okay. Ranson, how do you think he lost his hands? Vitalis. He's on a Metro Council.
Probably got chopped off in the body. Where's he from?
Kenya.
Probably stole something.
Oh, you think he stole something? Or he could have gone into the wrong tribe and, something bad happened there. Actually, what happened, he touched a high voltage wire. Now, if you take a knife and you stick it into an electrical outlet, it's not going to blow your hands off. But if you touch a high voltage wire, it will blow your hands off. And that's basically what happened. The wire, I guess, was exposed, in some codes in third world countries, they just have different standards than we do. And as a child, this is when he was a child, this happened to him. That would be a fairly traumatic experience for a kid to go through, to touch something and to blow your hands off. Now, this is something he has to deal with the rest of his life, which would create a lot of hurdles to jump. He was very successful as a Paralympic. He got to the podium. He set records in Paralympic in the 400-meter dash. He ran a 52-second 400-meter dash, which is, if you're doing a mile time at that pace, you're under a 4-minute pace. That's the 3-minute pace. That is very fast. So he got up on the podium. He has proven himself to be successful. Colleges love student athletes because they understand the discipline it takes to be successful. So he's successful, and then he goes to get a job in middle school, right? So he did have some struggles in middle school because middle school kids, they don't typically think about all of the problems that this gentleman has gone through in his life. And because of that, he ran into some confrontation, right? But just keep in mind that when you're dealing with major physical disabilities, it's not easy, right? And if you look at Michael Phelps, too, he had some major successes in his life, and he wasn't physically disabled. He thought about killing himself. If you read the previous article, it talks about how he thought about taking his life, and he's on a mission now to spread the word of, seek help. If he can save one life, he said it's more important than the gold medals that he earned. So keep that in mind as far as when you become successful, your burdens are not going to go away. They actually will increase a little bit because you tend to think that everybody's going to respect you. And you can see up here with Vitalis, not everybody did respect him. He struggled a little bit. He overturned a desk in a classroom. He did a couple other things that JCPS put him on suspension for. So you just have to understand that just because you're successful, that does not mean that everybody's going to respect you. Keep that in mind. Michael Phelps, perfect example.
Unlike those of other compounds, the physical structure of ionic compounds also contribute to their physical properties. These properties have been used in many applications, discussed in Figure 7.6. Physical structure. In an ionic compound, large numbers of positive ions and negative ions exist together in a ratio determined by the number of electrons transferred from the metal atom to the nonmetal atom. These ions are packed into a
An ionic compound result in formation of crystal lattice. A crystal lattice is a three-dimensional.
Excellent. Did you get the next one? This right here is the sulfate ion. And if you remember the rule, you change the 8 to ic. So it's
Hydrochloric sulfate.
no, it's sulfuric acid. It's not hydro, because if it's hydro, then it's going to be like hydrochloric, HCl. Sulfic would be H2S. So it's basically sulfuric acid.
In both cases,
210.
elements react with each other to form a compound. Figure 7.5a shows the reaction between the elements sodium and chlorine. During this reaction,
Ionic compounds contain a metallic cation and a non-metallic ion. Sodium chloride is a binary compound because it contains two different elements, sodium and chlorine. Magnesium oxide, MgO, the reaction product shown in figures.
Charged ion attract each other, forming the compound sodium chloride. The electrostatic force that holds oppositely charged particles together in an ionic compound is referred to as an ionic bond. Compounds that contain ionic bonds are ionic compounds. If ionic bonds occur between metals and the nonmetal oxygen, oxides form. Most other ionic compounds.
As you can see, the overall charge of 1 unit of calcium chloride is 0. Table 7.4 summarizes several ways in which the formation of an ionic compound, such as sodium chloride, can be represented.
All right, if you look at this data table, you'll see that the metal is doing what with its electron to the non-metal on the page right here. So you'll see it starts with a T. Yeah, it's transfer. That's a very important thing to understand about how ionic bonds are different than covalent bonds. The electron is transferred. So it's no longer going to be a part of the metal and its configuration. It's going over to the non-metal. Now remember, you are composed of chinops. What's that?
Chinops, like, what did you just say?
Chinops.
Carbon.
Shh. Right here. Leah?
Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus.
Phosphorus and sulfur.
Yeah.
So you're composed. Good job. Leah.
I was just guessing.
All right.
What, you say chinops?
Amani?
Yes.
Rosebud, you have two? Did you know it as well? Good job.
I knew it.
She got it first.
Let's just say that.
I knew it. I did. I apologize. I'll give you a point.
It's not me. I even had the periodic table on it.
All right. So practice. What else? Think it takes to be successful? Ethan? Hard work. What else? Doing the best you can.
Have a goal in mind.
Have a goal in mind. That's true. I mean, a lot of times people will have like coaches, assistants that might be family friends, and that can help you get better playing time. Talent, yeah. Now, Phelps said, they asked him what it takes to become a champion. He said, hard work, dedication, not giving up. So you got to just keep at it. Now, when Phelps went to his first Olympic event, did he earn a gold medal? No, he didn't earn any medals. His first. People think that if they become successful, all of their burdens will go away. That's what we strive for. We strive for success so that we won't have any more problems. Well, unfortunately, when you become really successful, you have certain expectations, and those expectations might not always get met. So Michael Phelps, he came back, he expected certain things to happen, and they didn't. It kind of depressed him a little bit. Now, if you are very successful, you expect everybody to respect you. And unfortunately, that's not typically what happens. Oftentimes, I mean, you can look at Trump to see this a little bit. He's been very successful businessman. But, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily respect him today. You have to remember that just because you're successful does not mean everybody's going to respect you. And that can be a burden for you. It can lead to a lot of, trouble. Now, some people will say that Trump is a little bit conceited. What does that mean? If you're conceited.
Self-centered.
Yeah, you're self-centered. You're only, look what I've done, look at all the things that look how great I am. And if you have ever been up on the podium and you win, it kind of fuels that a little bit. It fuels, look how great you are, look at the great things you've done. And it can be very difficult to get out of those feelings and to be where you can help others. And the biggest thing that Phelps talks about in this article, he says, if I can just help somebody battle with this depression, it will be better than winning a gold medal. So he takes it really seriously. I mean, I gave him a lot of credits for that. Helping you when one day you become successful, because all of you will be successful at one or two things in your life, and you just need to know how to deal with that a little bit. Two of them. There was the Republican senator from Kentucky. He killed himself. And then the other Dan Johnson was the council member who had an inappropriate... They both are named Dan Johnson. I don't know. That's kind of weird.
Both in the news a lot, though, aren't
yeah.
they? Oh, that's probably where I got them.
One is dead in it.
Yeah, that was the Republican senator. Well, this gentleman here, Vitalis, he's the one who replaced Dan Johnson on the Metro Council, which is the only reason why I'm talking about him, relating to Michael Phelps and success. It is a success to make it onto any government level job. I have tremendous respect for Vitalis because most people who are, I guess you would say, disabled don't work in the workplace. They end up staying at home because they are what about themselves? Ashamed or self-conscious. Good job, Noah, you're self-conscious. Now, be aware that, I said you're self-conscious, but if you have a disability, you're more likely to be self-conscious about yourself. Makes sense? Now, his disability is very visual. You can see here that he doesn't have any hands right there. Now, anybody know what happened to him? He's a Metro Council member, so you should probably know a little bit about it. But anybody know what happened to him?
Yeah, he got fired.
No, I mean, to lose his arms, what happened to him?
Oh yeah, some of he was like fixing some electrical thing and then the shocked his arms and then they had to take him off.
Exactly. He touched a high power voltage line. Now, if you put a knife into an electrical outlet, that's not going to blow your hand off, but if you touch a high voltage wire, it will blow your hand off. Now, we have a lot of safety code in the United States to prevent that from happening, but in Kenya, the codes might not have been as strict. So if the high voltage wires are close together, like the ones coming to your house are covered in plastic, so that like if you were to touch it, there's some, safety happening there. But if you touch ones that are uncovered, like I said, they will blow your hands off, and that's basically what happened to him. He blew his hands off. Now, this happened to him when he was really young, so, he had to adapt to this. This will be very difficult. Now, the older you get, you will find out the less coordinated you become. Like Michael Phelps, he's not going to swim anymore. He's taking off. He says, that's it. That's all I can do. Because the older you get, you're just not as fast.
How old is he?
He's 32, I think. But I'm not sure how old Vitalis is. He looks like he's fairly old, too. But, let's say you're older, you're carrying your books, you're older, you drop one, you're disabled like that. Everybody, is subject to accidents. But when you're disabled, you're subject to probably more accidents on a daily. And every time you have an accident, your confidence kind of drops a little bit. So it's going to be a little bit harder on him because he's disabled. And you can see that at Ramsey. He has been at the pinnacle of a career getting a Paralympic medal. So he's experienced success. And it's not easy to teach at middle school because middle school kids, they're very rambunctious. And it caused him a little bit of trouble with the middle school kids. And I do want to, give him a lot of, shout outs because he didn't give up. Oftentimes when you experience a little bit of failure, which he did experience a little failure, he didn't give up. He didn't say, I'm going to just quit. He stepped forward and went to the Metro Council, which is pretty impressive. And you got to give him some creds for not just quitting. Yeah, he drives too. I mean, just doing your daily bodily, functions, washing your hair and brushing your teeth and yeah, and just for me, I don't know how I would be able to go to the bathroom at school with confidence, because everybody has mistakes and accidents. It would be horrible. That would be in the back of my mind every time I was doing something like that. Yeah, it would be tough. Maybe the Hallmark, maybe the Hallmark channel.
Those are so fake.
Yeah, that's what people tend to think. They would tend to hope that life will be like the Hallmark channel, where everything will just be great. You'll go and you'll win your gold medal, and you'll come home and everybody will, like you and appreciate you. But that's not typically what happens. Oftentimes, you're still going to face burdens and hurdles that you were working so hard to try to decrease. Usually when you go after something really, really seriously, you're trying to make your life, I guess you would say, a little less trying. Like the Hallmark channel. Like the end of it always like everybody's going to be great, there's going to be no problems, life ever after, happily ever after. You think, I'm going to win those gold medals and everything's happily ever after. And then Michael Phelps comes home and he gets a DUI and he gets his picture taken smoking marijuana and things like that, doing things that are not appropriate for him to be doing as a yeah. Huh? You have to go down to the nurses for that. But other people have experienced that too, like Tiger Woods. He got charged with a DUI. Yeah, success doesn't always bring that Hallmark ending that we tend to think that it will. Now the second one was very difficult, sulfuric acid, because there are really two types of acids that have sulfur in them. You have sulfuric acid and you have H2S. H2S is hydrosulfuric or hydrosulfuric acid. Anytime you see the hydro, it tells you you're going to have hydrogen and the element sulfur, or the elemental nonmetal. So when you don't see it, when you just see sulfuric, this tells you have the ic to the 8 polyatomic ion. Hydro tells you have the elemental sulfur. That's kind of a key for you. Soon, maybe today. Yeah, today.